So the news has been pretty crazy lately. There's been a lot going on. There's the so-called WannaCry ransomware hack. That was basically like one of the biggest cyber attacks of that kind um, of all time. I mean, ever really. I mean, there's maybe even some that have rivaled it, but it was very, very massive. The new information, the new developments about the murdered DNC staffer Seth Rich. There's just been a lot of craziness in the news, and I'll get to all that. But I want to start off with an article from the Washington Post that has had people freaking out over the last couple days about President Trump supposedly leaking highly classified information to the Russian foreign minister and ambassador. If you'll remember, after firing FBI Director Comey, Trump had the Russian foreign minister and the ambassador come to the White House, and everybody was all up in a fuss about it because supposedly there was no reporters that were allowed in, and people were throwing out wild conspiracy theories, saying that President Trump allowed the Russians to place bugging devices in the White House and all this other nonsense. But the most recent accusation that's been thrown out there was by the Washington Post. And here is the headline: Trump revealed highly classified information to Russian foreign minister and ambassador. President Trump revealed highly classified information to the Russian foreign minister and ambassador in a White House meeting last week, according to current and former U.S. officials who said that Trump's disclosures jeopardized a critical source of intelligence on the Islamic State. The information Trump relayed has been provided by a U.S. partner through an intelligence sharing arrangement considered so sensitive the details have been withheld from allies and tightly restricted even within the U.S. government, officials said. And you'll note, as usual from these hit pieces, it is anonymous sources, of course. Quote, "This is code word information," said a U.S. official familiar with the matter, using terminology that refers to one of the highest classification levels used by American spy agencies. Trump, quote, "revealed more information to the Russian ambassador than we have shared with our own allies." For most anyone in government, discussing such matters would be with an adversary would be illegal. As president, Trump has broad authority to declassify government secrets, making it unlikely that his disclosures broke the law, and it's definitely key that they throw that into the article. That is something I think a lot of people have overlooked, even if this material was classified. It is within the president's power to declassify it, especially in circumstances like that, which I'll get to a little bit more here in a moment. But continuing, quote, "The president and his foreign minister reviewed common threats from terrorist organizations to include threats to aviation," said H.R. McMaster, the national security advisor, who participated in the meeting. Quote, "At no time were any intelligence sources or methods discussed, and no military operations were disclosed that were not already known publicly. The CIA declined to comment, and the National Security Agency did not respond to requests for comment." So, the accusations that Trump revealed highly classified information. We don't know if the information that he revealed actually was classified or not. If it was classified, it's within the president's authority, power to declassify it. As far as we know, what the information was that was revealed is intel about Islamic State, ISIS, being able to make laptop bombs, and that they were trying to smuggle them into airliners, into commercial airliners. So that was the intel that was supposedly shared with the Russians. H.R. McMaster, the national security advisor, came out and said that that basically what they discussed was completely normal, because you have to remember, we actually work with Russia to help take out ISIS in Syria. And H.R. McMaster came out and said that what the president said was not out of line, it was not inappropriate, and that it was completely within the lines of normal intelligence sharing that you would do with Russia in that circumstance, because again, we work with Russia to actually fight ISIS in Syria. So even if it was classified, it's within the president's ability to, power to do that. It wouldn't have been illegal. We don't even know if the information was classified, and the probable intel that was shared about the laptops is something that's actually been pretty widely reported over the last month or so. This is information that was already known, information that was already out there. And that's not to say that it's not classified again, but it doesn't matter even if it was. So, basically people are freaking out about this. Basically, people are trying to make this seem like it's a situation that it's really not. It's really not a big deal at all. You can question whether or not President Trump should have done that, whether it was a wise decision to share that information. That's your opinion, for sure. But there was nothing illegal about what he did. And the National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, came out and said that everybody who was in that meeting agrees it was totally normal and appropriate, the conversation they had, and that, again, it was part of normal intelligence sharing with Russia because we ally with them to fight ISIS. So, basically that's all completely and 100% overblown. But what is actually a concern is the fact that this information was leaked. Again, this goes to the problem of the quote-unquote deep state that is entrenched in government, basically the Obama establishment, Obama holdovers that have burrowed in and are continuing to beaver away in the Trump administration, causing all sorts of chicanery and leaking to the press like sieves. So it's completely crazy, and the leaks are just turning into a flood at this point. And the thing is, there wasn't that many people in that meeting. And there's a theory out there that H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, actually leaked this information. Now, the reason some people think that he may have done that is because there was information out that H.R. McMaster and some other key individuals in the Trump team are actually on the chopping block. So basically, their time is short. Trump is frustrated with them for one reason or the other, and he basically wants to clean house. And that brings me to my next article from The Telegraph. Donald Trump considers purging top White House staff. Donald Trump is considering a major purge of his top White House staff as he searches for a, quote, huge reboot following the most damaging week of his presidential term, political sources in Washington said on Sunday night. Taken aback by the fallout from his sudden dismissal of James Comey, the FBI director, and on the hunt for someone to blame, the president was said to be toying with firing senior allies from Reince Priebus, his chief of staff, to Sean Spicer, his combative press secretary. Quote, he's frustrated and angry at everyone, one confidant told Mike Allen, the leading political journalist, adding that the president was thinking about, quote, going big with his response. The question is how big and how bold, quote unquote. Democrats kept up the pressure on Sunday with leading politicians warning that they may refuse to vote on the nomination of a new FBI director who would have to be confirmed by the Senate until a special prosecutor was appointed. Quote, to have a special prosecutor, people would breathe a sigh of relief because then there would be a real independent person overlooking the FBI director. Chuck Schumer, Senate minority leader, told CNN, the lead slimeball of them all. And there were mounting calls, including from Republicans, for Mr. Trump to turn over any tapes of his conversations with Mr. Comey after the president suggested he may have secretly recorded them. So you got Trump looking at possibly cleaning house. He's looking at everybody from Reince Priebus and Sean Spicer, even reportedly H.R. McMaster and others, and he's looking at really just doing a clean sweep and bringing some fresh people in. Now, one of the key people who really needs to go, in my point of view, would be Reince Priebus. And Reince Priebus, being the chief of staff, it's basically his job to basically hire staff members to fill in all the positions that the Obama people are currently still entrenched in. Now, the thing is, reportedly, Reince Priebus does not exactly see eye to eye with President Trump on who should be appointed to these different positions. And there's been rumors that Reince Priebus has actually refused to hire to bring on people that Trump actually wanted, and that he's tried to go behind Trump's back to bring on people that he wanted to bring on, and what this has caused is sort of a deadlock, sort of a stalemate, where all the people that are being put forward to fill these positions are people that Trump doesn't really want, because he's got a chief of staff who does not see eye to eye with him. So what that's causing is a stalemate where no one's really getting put into these key positions. You've got the deputy and the head of all these different agencies. Aside from that, it's all still the Obama people. And that is why it's basically still the Obama administration, just with Trump as the president. So it's a huge problem. Reince Priebus really needs to go. And Reince Priebus has reportedly been actually a source of a lot of the leaks, and has been one of the key figures in getting leaks out there. Now, this comes from someone called Mike Cernovich. Now, Mike Cernovich is sort of a kind of... people like to think of him as like a sort of kooky conspiracy theorist, maybe alt-right sort of guy. But, they call him, fake news, of course. But the thing is, the guy's getting real scoops. The guy's getting real scoops, and he's getting them before mainstream media in many cases. And the mainstream media is actually having to admit this now. And that brings me to my next article from the Daily Caller. Media starting to admit 60 Minutes was wrong to call Mike Cernovich fake news. Scott Pele, the host of CBS's 60 Minutes, portrayed right-wing blogger Mike Cernovich as, quote, fake news in a tense interview late March. Less than 2 months later, journalists are beginning to admit that Pele was wrong. Quote, Mike Cernovich continues to regularly scoop Bloomberg columnist Eli Lake, who appears to share at least one Trump administration source with the Guerrilla Mindset author, wrote Will Sommer, an editor for The Hill, in his weekly newsletter on Monday. Quote, once again, Lake trailed in Cernovich's wake this week with dueling stories about Trump's discontent with National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster. Cernovich, who has a history of promoting wild conspiracy theories, such as that Hillary Clinton suffers from Parkinson's disease, previously scooped Lake to the news that former Obama advisor Susan Rice requested the unmasking of Trump associates and raw intelligence reports. So Cernovich comes out, says that, Susan Rice was actually unmasking people after she said that she wasn't. And he comes out, they say it's fake news. And then Bloomberg actually reports on it after him. So it turns out it wasn't fake news. It was real news. And it turns out he's actually got real sources, and he's getting real scoops. Key sources. I mean, you're talking about White House sources here, or people close to the White House. So it's getting harder and harder for them to call people like that fake news. It's getting harder and harder for them to call people like InfoWars fake news. Look, you can hate on InfoWars all you want. You can hate Alex Jones all you want. You got to really look into what he says. You don't, try not to just hate the guy. Try to look at what he's saying. Look at the information he's putting forward. No, he doesn't get everything right. I disagree with him on a number of issues, but people just like to paint him with this broad brush of just being a conspiracy theorist. People like Mike Cernovich is just being a conspiracy theorist. But it turns out people like Mike Cernovich and Alex Jones actually have real sources. They're getting real info, from high-level people. So, you look at InfoWars, Alex Jones, was reporting that the Obama administration looted the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and took that money to basically fund Obamacare. The media came out and said it was totally fake news. Then the Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, I believe, he actually came out and then admitted that it was true. Yes, they stole that money from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac depositors to fund Obamacare, because it would have gone broke almost instantly, because that's how wonderful Obamacare is. But the point is, you know, they like to say that people like Cernovich and Alex Jones are fake news. It's getting harder and harder for them to do that and to just paint them with this broad brush when they keep, breaking information days or weeks before the mainstream media. And it goes on. The Scoop earned Cernovich a congratulatory tweet from Donald Trump Jr. That's funny. Shortly after the Rice news broke, the New Yorker's Andrew Marantz admitted that, quote, Cernovich now seems to have anonymous sources in the White House or close to it, in a piece that was largely critical of Cernovich. Even BuzzFeed News, the absolute, gold standard for fake news, which consistently has a liberal slant in its news coverage. There you go. That's one way to put it. Conceded that Cernovich is getting some very real scoops. Quote, but the early months of the Trump administration have proven Pele wrong, BuzzFeed reporter Charlie Warzel wrote in a piece over the weekend titled, quote, what happens when the pro-Trump media gets actual scoops? Oh my gosh, and I bet he was just freaking out about it. What are we going to do if these alt-right neo-Nazis are actually getting real information? How do we counter them with our fake news? That's just, my BuzzFeed writer interpretation. Quote, since April, Cernovich has broken a number of significant national security stories, which many of which have been subsequently confirmed, at least in part, by mainstream outlets, Warzel said, echoing a piece Cernovich published last week titled 7 Stories Mike Cernovich Had Before the Mainstream Media. How can they call him fake news? So, that's the narrative that's always put forward. And it's pretty telling when you've got someone even like BuzzFeed, who is just, again, the gold standard for fake news, coming out and actually having to admit that someone like Mike Cernovich is getting real scoops. So definitely very telling. Now I want to move on, sort of shift gears a little bit and move on to a little bit of North Korea news. So this is from CNN. North Korea offers extended middle finger to Trump. And of course, North Korea has been quite uppity lately. It seems like they really want to basically be bombed into oblivion. So that is just lovely. They keep pushing for that. North Korea staged a brazen show of defiance against the Trump administration's attempts to curb its nuclear ambitions, testing a missile Sunday that it said could reach U.S. territory. Well, the Northeast Asian country is given to wild hyperbole. Analysts said the launch is the country's most successful to date and marks a significant step in its quest to build a nuclear-armed ballistic missile that could reach the continental U.S. They add that the development could raise tensions between Washington and Beijing, North Korea's major protector, and shows just how hard it is to curtail Pyongyang. Quote, in a way, it's an extended middle finger to Trump, said Bruce Klingner, senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and to the newly elected Moon Jae-in and to China. Klingner, I have a hard time with that one, also noted the missile landed very near Russia and said that the display of disrespect might have been meant to include Vladimir Putin as well. So, I mean, would you look at that right there? I mean, there's a lot of people who say, North Korea really is crazy. I tend to think they more so put off, sort of this crazy rhetoric, this crazy act, to try to not get people to mess with them. It's sort of their way of, avoiding conflict by sort of acting so crazy that people think they may strike at any moment. But that is just that is just stupid. I mean, if they really were trying to, intimidate Russia, I mean, good grief. I mean, you're talking, you've already got the United States, I mean, Donald Trump's basically got his finger on the, he's got an itchy trigger finger, for North Korea. I can tell you that right now. And you've got China, even, just the lifeline of North Korea, putting immense pressure on them, to stop, developing their ballistic, missile program and their nuclear program. Of course, you've got South Korea, obviously, completely against the actions that North Korea is doing. You've got Japan, just absolutely freaked out, doing massive drills, evacuating people from South Korea, just freaking out. Of course, they're, getting ready for some kind of conflict. And now you're trying to tick off Russia? My God, maybe the little fat man really is just 100% insane. I mean, I guess that, he's a bloodthirsty, evil, dictator, little demon pig dictator, sure, but I didn't think he was, completely stupid. But man, it's starting to look like that may very well be the case. Quote, "If it was a signal, it could have been directed at any of the neighbors," Klingner said, noting that it represented yet another violation of UN resolutions. While experts say Pyongyang is still some time from actually being able to strike the U.S. mainland, the missile test, the 7th this year, was clearly meant to put Trump on notice. Pyongyang said the missile it launched could carry a nuclear warhead and warned that the U.S. mainland is now within sighting range for a strike. And so you've got North Korea just pushing and pushing and pushing and just antagonizing everybody. It's going to almost inevitably wind up spilling out into a conflict in one way or another, whether that means China doing something to stop their nuclear and ballistic missile ambitions, or whether that means a joint effort with the United States and South Korea and Japan, maybe. Who knows? But it's really getting to that point. I mean, it's like you've got someone, coming up to you. They're loading a gun. They're saying, "I'm gonna shoot you. I'm gonna shoot you," as they're loading a gun. It's like, what do? You got to do something at some point. The only thing, the big thing that's being taken into consideration right now is the impact that it would obviously have on countries that North Korea almost certainly could do some serious damage to. I mean, like China, for example. Obviously, South Korea. South Korea would almost certainly be the biggest victim of whatever conflict wound up spilling into North Korea. So, you're talking about potentially, hundreds of thousands or millions of people innocent people that could be killed. So that's the main thing that's being taken into consideration right now. It's, a delicate situation. They're trying to figure out a way to handle the situation where you're going to have the least amount of casualties, and they want to make sure that the situation is right politically, which definitely with China putting pressure on North Korea, we're moving in that direction. So it's just a matter of time before the trigger gets pulled on some sort of operation in North Korea. Kim Jong-un's days on this planet are probably numbered. He's definitely he's a dead man walking at this point. So hopefully that can be handled in the best way possible, whatever that winds up being. But definitely that little demonic chipmunk, dictator man ruling over all those poor starving people really needs to just be dealt with at this point. And now we move on to some other craziness, not North Korean craziness, but some worldwide craziness. And this is from Wired magazine. The WannaCry ransomware hackers made some real amateur mistakes. So apparently there was this massive cyber attack on just a number of different locations around the world. It was really massive, almost unprecedented from what I what I could gather, and it was something that affected a lot of different people, a lot of different organizations, and it really illustrated a few things, and I think this article does a pretty good job at summing some of that up. The WannaCry ransomware attack has quickly become the worst digital disaster to strike the internet in years, crippling transport and hospitals globally. But it increasingly appears that it is not the work of hacker masterminds. Instead, cybersecurity investigators see in the recent meltdown a sloppy cyber criminal scheme, one that reveals amateur mistakes at practically every turn. As the unprecedented ransomware attack known as WannaCry or WCrypt unfolds, the cybersecurity community has marveled at the inexplicable errors the malware's authors have made. Despite the giant footprint of the attack, which leveraged a leaked NSA-created Windows hacking technique to infect more than 200,000 systems across 150 countries, malware analysts say poor choices on the part of WannaCry's creators have limited both its scope and profit. So what they said there is definitely key. So this malware was actually created by the NSA. It was created by the National Security Agency, and it was leaked. It was leaked out. These criminals got a hold of it, and they actually used it in the cyber attack. So it's just, definitely worth noting that it's actually malware created by the NSA that was used to orchestrate this attack. That's definitely no sense of irony there. Those errors include building a web-based kill switch that cuts short its spread, unsavvy handling of Bitcoin payments that makes it far easier to track the hacker group's profits, and even a shoddy ransom function in the malware itself. Some analysts say the system makes it impossible for the criminals to know who's paid the ransom and who hasn't. So definitely some real amateurish mistakes that were made there. I believe one of the people that was hacked, I think, is Disney. I believe the new Pirates of the Caribbean movie was actually hacked and obtained. So they're asking Disney for money. They're bribing Disney. Netflix actually recently was hacked as well, and they had at least the new season of Orange is the New Black, which is a show I do not watch, but season 5 of that, I believe, was hacked and stolen, and they tried to get money out of Netflix. Netflix either didn't respond or refused, one of the two, but they actually followed through on the threat, and they actually released, at least I believe, the first half or so of season 5, the upcoming season of Orange is the New Black. So I'm not saying it's the same people. I have no idea, but there's a chance that if these guys don't get what they want, maybe they'll follow through on it. But the article says that they actually may not be able to tell who's giving them the ransom money. So they're bribing all these different people, and they may get some ransom payments, but they very well might not actually know who's paying them off. So one of the many mistakes that was made, and the article concludes here, an attack of this magnitude involving so many missteps raises plenty of questions while delivering a sobering reminder. If actual cyber criminal professionals improved on the group's methods, the results could be even graver. So definitely very key. Our cybersecurity protection is not at the level that it should be, and there's a very key reason for that, and it goes back to the fact that it was leaked NSA software, leaked NSA malware that made this happen. The former technical director of the NSA, a guy named William Benny, has come out over the years and said that with the NSA creating all these back doors into different systems and creating these different types of malware and all this other stuff, what you're going to be susceptible to is hacks and leaks and intrusions. If you make a backdoor into a system, that doesn't mean that just you can necessarily get into it. Other people can also get into it as well. And this is what the former technical director of the NSA warned about. Of course, they didn't follow through on his recommendations whatsoever. They created this giant system that is completely susceptible to leaks of malware like this and backdoors into systems that people are able to exploit. And you also had WikiLeaks come out and released a trove of information about how the CIA was actually using basically Russian-made malware and using it to potentially false flag and blame other countries. So, I mean, you've just got all sorts of crazy, shady, criminal activity basically going on behind the scenes, and this is definitely this definitely illustrates that quite well. And speaking of WikiLeaks, that brings me to my next story, which is definitely a key story. So this is something that the mainstream media is completely ignoring as they're doubling down on Russian fake news. But it is a very important story, and we don't know the full implications of this, but I'm going to lay it out for you, and I'll let you decide for yourself. From Fox News, family of slain DNC staffer Seth Rich blasts detective over report of WikiLeaks link. Now, Seth Rich was... A lot of people think Seth Rich was the person who helped Julian Assange. People think he leaked the DNC emails to Julian Assange. A lot of people think that. It's been portrayed as a total conspiracy theory by the mainstream media and the establishment, basically. But there is now coming to light some real evidence that actually may very well have been the case. He may have actually been the source of that information. So the article goes on here. The family of the Democratic National Committee staffer who was gunned down on July 10th on Washington, D.C., blasted reports that he was a source of emails leaked to WikiLeaks. Rod Wheeler, a retired Washington homicide detective and Fox News contributor investigating the case on behalf of the Rich family, made the WikiLeaks claim, which was corroborated by a federal investigator who spoke to Fox News, and he said, quote, my investigation up to this point shows there was some degree of email exchange between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks, and that is absolutely key. Wheeler made his comments on the possible Rich WikiLeaks connection in a story first reported Monday night by Fox 5 DC. But a spokesman for Rich's family on Tuesday said Wheeler was not authorized to speak for the family and called assertions Seth Rich sent emails to WikiLeaks unsubstantiated. Brad Bauman said even if purported emails were to surface, it would not necessarily mean Rich had helped WikiLeaks. So the spokesman for the family obviously coming out and, denying it. The family itself is saying that there's basically no evidence for that. Now, the evidence obviously would have been on Seth Rich's laptop, which would not necessarily be available to the family. That's going to be in the police or FBI custody at this point for the purposes of their investigation. And it's worth noting, for sure, that the family, at first, that this was not their story. At first, they were definitely questioning what happened to Seth Rich, and their story has changed. I'm not trying to do anything to put down the family. I feel, very sad for their loss. It's horrible. I'm just trying to look at the information, the facts as they're coming out, and trying to get to the bottom of things, trying to find the truth, because I think that's just what needs to happen. That's what you have to do. And, you know, you've got a lot of claims, a lot of accusations being made about this, but the bottom line is no one really knows, exactly what happened. But the evidence is starting to certainly point in a certain direction. So the article goes on. An FBI forensic report of Rich's computer, generated within 96 hours after Rich's murder, showed he made contact with WikiLeaks through Gavin McFadden, a now deceased American investigative reporter, documentary filmmaker, and director of WikiLeaks who was living in London at the time, the federal source told Fox News. Quote, I have seen and read the emails between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks, the federal investigator told Fox News, confirming the McFadden connection. He said the emails are in possession of the FBI, while the stalled case is in the hands of the Washington Police Department. And that's another, again, unconfirmed report, is that the DC police were actually told to basically stand down in this investigation. So, again, that's not corroborated. We don't know if that's true. It's just a claim that's being thrown out there at the moment. But that's definitely very telling if that's true. The revelation is consistent with the findings of Wheeler, whose private investigation firm was hired by a third party on behalf of Rich's family to probe the case. Quote, my investigation up to this point shows there was some degree of email exchange between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks, Wheeler said. I do believe that the answers to who murdered Seth Rich sits on his computer on a shelf at the DC police or FBI headquarters. The federal investigator, who requested anonymity, said 44,053 emails and 17,761 attachments between Democratic National Committee leaders, spanning from the January 2015 through late May 2016, were transferred from Rich to McFadden before May 21st. On July 22nd, just 12 days after Rich was killed, and this is very important, WikiLeaks published internal DNC emails that appeared to show top party officials conspired to stop Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont from becoming the party's presidential nominee. The controversy resulted in Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigning as DNC chairperson. So, if you remember, the DNC was absolutely conspiring against Bernie Sanders. I am no Bernie Sanders supporter or a fan at all. Not a fan of socialism. So, just getting that out of the way. But the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, absolutely conspired to give the nomination to Hillary Clinton right off the bat. That was their plan. They weren't going to allow Bernie Sanders to get the nomination. Seth Rich was a DNC staffer, and he was a pro-Bernie Sanders DNC staffer. Okay? He gets murdered. They say it's a robbery. The guy had something like several $1,000s worth of jewelry on him, like a necklace and watch that didn't get taken. His watch didn't get taken. Nothing actually got taken from him. Of course, they say it was a quote-unquote botched robbery. Well, if that's a botched robbery, that's as botched as a robbery gets. Then, 12 days after he gets murdered, all of these emails, these DNC emails, gets leaked. Then Julian Assange, the head guy of WikiLeaks, comes out and offers a $20,000 reward for information that leads to finding the killer, the person who killed Seth Rich. Then you've now got this, this detective, this former, retired homicide detective, and a federal agent, basically. You're both saying that in Seth Rich's emails in his laptop, he was actually communicating with Julian Assange. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe he wasn't the source of the leaks. Maybe he wasn't. But, I mean, when you look at the evidence, when you look at the facts, it seems pretty overwhelming, and it points certainly in one direction, one very key direction. And the thing about this is, if this is true, if Seth Rich really was the person who did the DNC leaks, this blows an absolutely massive hole in the Russian collusion narrative, because again, remember, notion that was put out there by the CIA and our 17 intelligence agencies was that it was the Russians that hacked the DNC. I mean, this would just blow an absolutely massive hole into that, and a lot of people have noticed that it seems like the Russian false news, fake news, has jumped to a fever pitch at this point. It's actually just been cranked up all the way to the maximum, and it's interesting that right as that's happening, the MSM just doubling down more and more on fake Russian news, saying that Trump is leaking highly classified information to the Russians, and all this other garbage, that the mainstream media would be completely ignoring this, completely ignoring Seth Rich and this bombshell revelation that came out. So just definitely very telling. I think the silence is deafening from the mainstream media on this. So I'll definitely continue to cover this as this unfolds, and this is the implications of this are just massive. So we'll see what happens. And now that brings me to my last story of the day, from the Daily Wire. And this just illustrates the total, absolute war within the entrenched establishment against Trump. Shock report: Trump asked Comey to drop Flynn investigation. Comey kept memo about it. In a bombshell announcement on Tuesday afternoon, the New York Times revealed that former FBI Director James B. Comey wrote a memo memorializing his conversation with President Trump in February in the Oval Office, in which Trump asked Comey to terminate the federal investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael T. Flynn. The memo, written by Comey, quoted Trump saying, quote, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go." Comey was quoted as evading the request and simply responding, quote, "I agree, he is a good guy." The meeting between the two men occurred on February 14th, the day after Flynn resigned from his post. Comey saw Trump after a terrorism threat briefing in the Oval Office with senior national security officials. After the meeting, Trump reportedly told everyone to leave, including Vice President Pence and Attorney General Jeff Sessions, except for Comey. According to one Comey associate, again, anonymous sources, Trump allegedly started the conversation by railing against leaks to the news media, wanting Comey to put reporters in prison for publishing classified information. The White House denied the substance of the memo, stating, quote, "Well, the president has repeatedly expressed his view that General Flynn is a decent man who served and protected our country. The president has never asked Mr. Comey or anyone else to end any investigation, including any investigation involving General Flynn. The president has the utmost respect for our law enforcement agencies and all investigations. This is not a truthful or accurate portrayal of the conversation between the president and Mr. Comey." So, I mean, what you've got here is the establishment striking back. The empire is striking back. The swamp is striking back. And, look, after Comey got fired, after FBI Director Comey got fired, I could imagine he's probably a little butthurt because, he was doing his little FBI speech, and in the middle of his speech, he gets to look in the background and see the news in the background actually saying that he's fired. That's literally how he found out he was fired. So, he's probably a little bit upset about that one. And Comey came out after he got fired, and he starts leaking stuff to the media. He leaks to the media that almost certainly, he leaks to the media that that he requested further funding for the Trump-Russia probe, the investigation into the Trump collusion with Russia, and he comes out, leaks that to the press. Then the acting FBI director, Andrew McCabe, I believe, who is a Democrat. I mean, he's a guy that is, there's no way the Democrats can come out and say that, he's, pro-Trump or something like that. It's just absurd. So he comes out and he says, that's not true. They have plenty of funding. There was never a request for more funding. So completely, going against what Comey says. And then, of course, Trump comes out and tweets, hey, Comey, you better hope that, we don't have tape recordings of our conversations that we had during dinner. Because here you got Comey coming out and trying to leak fake stuff to the media. So Trump's saying, look, if you're going to do this, you're going to try to leak fake stuff. Look, you better hope we don't have recordings, of you. And then the media focuses on the fact that Trump may have recorded their conversation, which, I mean, again, actually would have been legal, would have been okay. And it's just insane that they focus on that instead of the fact that you've got Comey actually trying to leak false information to the media. And now, of course, you've just magically got the Comey diaries popping up where he was writing all about how big and bad, Trump was. And you just got the mainstream media rolling with it. Of course you do. It's almost certainly completely garbage. We'll give it a few days, see what comes out of it. Of course, the White House is denying it, but I mean, it's just totally absurd. We've got a media establishment and just a government establishment that is completely entrenched. It is completely at war with this president, and it is completely absurd. President Trump needs to clean house. He needs to replace, in my point of view, Priebus, McMaster, just all of them. I mean, you need to get rid of the press secretary too, Sean Spicer. Just, get rid of him. But bring in Kimberly Guilfoyle, like I've been hearing. I mean, she would be a lot better to look at than Sean Spicer too, so that's nice. And you need to just get rid of these Obama people. Get rid of Reince Priebus, get a better chief of staff, one you see eye to eye with, one that's loyal to you, one that actually agrees with your vision, and then you can actually get these positions filled with people that want to push forward your agenda, not Obama's agenda. So, I mean, it is just craziness going on in the government right now, just insanity going on behind the scenes, and I mean, we are living in crazy times. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe, leave a comment if you'd like, and if you'd like to hear the audio version of this, I'll have that on SoundCloud. Also, you can follow me on Twitter or like me on Facebook, and I will have the links for all of that in the description. I hope you have a wonderful day, and may the force be with you.